Whoa! Hey! Don't touch me! Don't touch me! Whoa! Hey! Don't touch me! Hey! Hey! Don't touch me! Don't touch me! Hey! Oh! Don't touch me! La 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 la. Don't touch me!
Hi guys, this is Miss Meyer with another episode of the Miss Meyer Show. So today what we're going to talk about is Chapter 9, Part 1. So that is going to be in your textbook, pages 324 to 340-ish. Okay, so those are the ones. Remember, your textbook, for all my new students, your textbook is virtual, mine's physical. So that's why it's different. Okay, so we're going to be talking today about the Great Depression and how it affected Louisiana and how Louisiana's government kind of got really corrupt and really made a name for itself with corruption. We're talking starting to talk about Huey Long and all of that. So first off, let's begin with the Great Depression. So World War One, this is 9-1, right? I feel like I just skipped over World War One. Well, World War One was basically a war that was fought about alliances. It was kind of like when you go fighting if you got into an argument, like, no, here it is. Let's say somebody messed with your best friend, told your best friend something, and you're going to be like, hey, you don't talk that way about my best friend. I'm going to get involved. You fighting my best friend, you're going to fight me. That's the kind of thing that got us all involved into World War One, because it was nothing but alliances. First, it was Germany had declared war on, I think of Serbia or somewhere. I can't remember the first one, but it became, Germany had declared war on, I can't remember. Like, I don't even know the whole process, but it was like everybody's allies. It was just because that's how they got together. You ever heard of the game Axis and Allies? The same thing as this is what it was. It was basically saying, okay, well, you're going to pick on my friend and you're going to pick on me because he's my friend. Louisiana was friends with, Great Britain and, Russia. No, not Russia. Yes, I'm trying to think. Great Britain, we were allies with Great Britain. Yeah, and I think Russia, but Russia had their own issue during the World War One. So in World War One, the United States was aligned with all the same people that we were aligned with pretty much in World War Two. The big thing was that in World War One, and I know you guys know the movie Anastasia, the whole Russian Revolution, that is what happened in World War One. So Russia really kind of just fell to the wayside, and it was really America and England that were the two giant big wigs of the time. Well, after World War One, America did not have like this legendary status that it does today. It's not like, oh, America, we weren't. We were great, yeah, but we weren't known as this huge superpower. Well, after the World War One, there's lots of issues still in the United States. Something starts to happen, and economic turmoil goes all over the world. It's not just the United States, it's everywhere. And it was where people were starting to lose money. Businesses were starting to kind of collapse. There was like an economic downtrend, like a really big economic downtrend, when people were just like, what's going on? There was not a lot of money to be made. And like I said, it wasn't just in Louisiana, and it wasn't just in the United States. And so this became known as a depression. Now, the reason that we call it in America the Great Depression is because it lasted so long. It was a really long period of time. Now, the depression is when, like I said, that people started to lose some serious money. Now, the first people that were affected, really, were farmers and your agricultural businesses. This was a problem that was really the big thing that hit them was after World War One. they no longer needed all this food to feed these soldiers. So whereas the farmers in the United States were previously making good money because they were supplying food to our troops overseas, well, after the war's over, the government doesn't need all that food. They don't need all of that. So farmers and agricultural workers are kind of left with all this surplus that no one was buying. So the first people who were affected were the farmers, the agricultural people. And Louisiana is mainly agricultural. So we had a lot of people that were severely affected immediately in the Great Depression. It was the farmers. Now, the Great Depression in Louisiana, like I said, it did affect a ton of the farmers. It really, really did. But another way it hit us in Louisiana was that, we were never we were never a rich state. So when the Depression really got to the point where it was just people were losing money, they were losing their jobs, they were losing their homes, they were losing everything. You're losing money you're taking money. People that don't have a lot of money are losing what little they do have, and so they're losing their homes. And there's no programs at this time. There's nowhere for them to go and say, hey, can you please help me? There's nothing. So when people were losing homes and jobs and everything else, there was nothing. Well, literally, what do you do? Where do you go? How do you feed your kids? How do you do that? It's almost impossible. Well, the thing was, and how the Depression really affected people, was that you have to understand the cycle of what the Depression was. So this is how it kind of goes into play. Now, you can see in your textbook, and don't write in your textbook. Okay, I only write in mine because it's mine, and I'm the teacher. Okay, so you see this Depression cycle, and it's on page 326. So it kind of surrounds the whole industry thing. So stocks are what people invest into businesses. So like if you want to play the stock market, which I encourage you guys to even just research it and find stuff. We will talk more about the stock market when we go into the economics. But when people stop investing in businesses, stock prices fall. Stock prices fall, people are going to withdraw. They're going to take their money out. And a lot of businesses rely on shareholders paying into their business. Okay? So let's pretend that there's this big company, or this big factory, this big business. Let's pretend that, okay, we're going to go, this is not true. This is totally just pretend. So let's pretend that, or not even pretend. Let's talk about Toys R Us. Toys R Us, like the biggest toy store in the world. When I was a kid, Jeffrey the giraffe, he was like everything, I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. They shut down, yes. Okay, so, all right, so Toys R Us, the stocks in Toys R Us started to plummet like crazy. Nobody was buying stocks. So stocks were like really, 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 really low. No one was purchasing new stocks. Stocks were barely, rising at all, and it came down to the point where the company was not making any profit and they were going to go out of business. So because the investors in Toys R Us were very, very low, stocks were low and they were dropping, people were selling their shares like crazy for cheap, the company of Toys R Us and Babies R Us said, we're going to close because of this. We're closing all of our stores. We're closing our factories. Well, if they close the factories, they don't have the stuff to supply the stores. They don't have the stuff to supply the stores, they're going to close the store. And when the store closes, the people that work at that store lose their jobs. Now, that's just one instance. That's just one instance of Toys R Us. Imagine that happening to 50, 100, 200, 300 businesses, 300 industries. Imagine that happening to everyone that you could possibly think of. And it wasn't just retail stores. It was everything, even banks, okay? Which we're going to talk about in a second. So all of a sudden, I kind of had to backtrack a little bit and talk about the roaring 20s. So the Roaring Twenties was this time period where everybody was like happy-go-lucky and living on, it's a flapper time, that kind of in place. And so people started buying on credit. And they would say, oh, well, my credit's good. Let me just write you a slip for credit. And so if you didn't have the money, like even like right now, if you don't have the money for something and then you get a credit card, you're paying for it now, and you'll buy it now and pay for it later. Well, before the Great Depression, during the Roaring Twenties, right before the Great Depression, actually, this is when credit became really, really popular, and everybody was buying on credit. Put it on my charge account. I don't want to, whatever. Well, the problem is when this depression hit and these businesses were losing their, were kind of going under, when they started to say, hey, come on, you owe us X amount of dollars. Well, they say, I don't have any money to pay you. I just lost my job. And they say, well, if you don't pay us, we're going to close our doors and all of our workers are going to lose their jobs. And they say, what do you want me to do? I don't have any money. I have nothing. So then all these people that were buying on credit and these stores that were accepting credit, now we're trying to get that money back, and there was none to get. So people who were running out of money, they didn't have a job anymore, they were all rushing to the banks to try to get their money out of the banks. Well, the banks, this is before their FDIC. Now, we don't have to worry about this because we're FDIC, which means we're insured. But before then, we weren't. Like my grandfather, he grew up in the Depression era, and he never trusted banks. And when he died, I remember my mom and my uncles were finding like stashes of money in places all over his apartment because he didn't trust the banks. Because what happened was, when you went to a bank to open up, a line of credit or something, say that you would go and invest in something. So let's pretend I'm running a bank and I don't have any money. If I keep cash money around my house, it's gone. Okay, my children will steal it and I will never see it again. So let's see how much money I've got to even pretend with. They're thieves. Yeah, look, I had this hidden. Look, come on. They found the dollars in it and left me the change. Okay, so let's pretend I've got this money and it's worth, this is gold. Let's all pretend this is gold, okay? And so I go and I invest it into a bank and I say, okay, this is, let's say, $600 worth of gold, and I'm putting it in the bank. What? I'm doing what?
You said Kate.
No, I didn't.
Oh.
Sorry. All right, out. So let's say I'm putting this in the bank. So put my money in the bank, all my gold money, and I say, okay, there, it's safe because I don't trust it. I'm scared to keep it on hand because somebody might break into my house, or I might have like 3 very sinister and sneaky daughters that want to steal my money. So I go and I put it in the bank. Well, right before the Depression, the bank would then say, okay, so we've got this money here. Well, here comes another person and they say, hey, I'd like to take out a loan. And so the bank takes my money and gives it to that person who wants a loan because the stock market was going very well. There was lots of prosperity at that time. They thought for sure when they pay the loan back, they would pay it with interest because you have to pay a little extra. So like if you take out $10,000 out of the bank, you're going to have to pay back $10,000 and $10,300, but you have to pay the interest too. So the bank was under the notion that when they pay that loan back, not only will that money go back into that other person, my account, but the bank will make money off of it as well. And that was really what happened. That was consistently happening time and time again. They had no idea that this was going to fail, okay? Well, the problem was when the Depression hit and Black Tuesday hit and everybody was losing their jobs and the stock market had dropped like crazy, people were rushing to the bank to get their money out. And the bank was not at all prepared for this, and they didn't have that money there because they had lent it out to other people. So when people were trying to rush to the bank to get their money out, only to be told that everything that they had deposited into the bank was no longer there. So people were like rushing over to these banks demanding their money, but then finding out that their money was not there at all for them. They literally closed the doors in the people's faces, and the people were outside banks screaming for their money, and they said, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you, we don't have it. And now, praise praise the Lord, we have FDIC insured, which means the banks have to have on hand enough money for every deposit made. So they've got to have it for every single person. But they didn't have that back then. So people lost their entire life savings on Black Tuesday, because that's when the big stock market, the big bull stock market, which we'll talk more about that when we get to the economics portion of the bull and the bear stock market, it crashed. And people were losing everything. All of their money was like tied up in stocks, because people truly believed that the stock market would continue to go up, and it would never ever fall. They thought that would never happen. So people were investing everything they had, except for like maybe, I don't know, a couple of hundred, couple thousand, into the stock market. And when it crashed, everybody lost everything. And if they had money in the bank and they ran to the bank to go get it out, the bank didn't have it. They didn't have it to give to them. They were not able to even access it. So everything, like, they were super rich people at this time on Black Tuesday, when they realized that everything they had was gone, they killed themselves. They would like jumped off of buildings and stuff like that, because everything was wiped out in one day. And that's why they call it Black Tuesday. Okay, it's not like Black Friday. Black Friday is an economic, a consumer term. Black Tuesday is a historical term that really describes a day that was just really horrible. And people lost everything. Now, the president at this time, at the very, very beginning of the Depression, was Herbert Hoover. And Hoover, when I say, I don't know if he didn't understand how to govern during this time of great turmoil with the people of America. See, Hoover was kind of like a laissez-faire type of leader, meaning he was very hands-off. He kind of just let them kind of do what they wanted to do. Like, I consider myself, I know, like, the accuracy of these quizzes are so wonderful, but I took one of these, Facebook quizzes or whatever. What kind of mother are you? And I'm the laissez-faire mom. I really am. Because I'm kind of like, well, whatever, oh, go ahead. And, Mom, can we do this? Whatever. Okay, so that's kind of how Hoover was as a leader. He was not really prepared to, kind of step up and be the leader that the people needed, especially now when they were so desperate. So his whole view of the Depression was that the states handle it. Hands off pretty much with the government. He didn't want people to have, the government to have too much control. So he was like, okay, well, you states handle it. The states are like, well, I don't know, how are we going to handle it? We don't have any money. What are we going to do? And Herbert Hoover was like, look, I'm going to let you know your people best, so you handle it. But they did not know what to do. They're like, okay, no, I don't want that responsibility. You have to help me. Well, Herbert Hoover was like, no, you can handle it. You can do this on your own. Everybody's facing this depression, and you know what's best for the people of your state, and I trust you. And they're like, please don't trust me. Please don't trust me. So the American people were like, we don't know what to do. We lost our jobs. We lost our life savings. We're going to the state government to say, please help us. The state government is saying, we don't know how to help you. So the state government goes to the national government. And the national government says, it's up to you to help them. It's a state thing. And so the people started to become extraordinarily upset with Herbert Hoover. They were saying, hey, people are dying. Because like I said, there was no social programs. Like right now, there's programs out there to help you if you lose your job, or if you don't have the money to, pay electric bill or your rent or housing, HUD subsidies, there's food stamps, and all those things. There were none. So when you lost your job and you lost your life savings, you were living on the streets, and you would go to bread lines to get something to eat, or to feed your family. I know I've told you guys this before, but my grandfather, they existed on bread and lard for like weeks at a time, because that's all they would have. Lard is animal fat. It's like grease. That's all they would eat. Lard sandwiches. I mean, because that's all, and there was nothing else for them. They had no, my great-grandfather lost his job, and it was just, that's all they had. Now, Hoover comes up for re-election, and he is challenged by Governor Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who we now know as FDR. Now, FDR was a Democrat, and he truly thought, he believed that the only way to get out of this depression was to do it on a national level. Like he was obviously saying that the states were not capable of doing this on their own. They needed to have national assistance. They needed help. They just couldn't do it on their own. It's kind of like my daughter, my youngest one, she loves to cook, and I don't know if you know how I feel about cooking. I hate it. I loathe cooking. Okay, when I cook, I throw the pots and pans around as I'm doing it so that everyone around me knows just how much I hate cooking. Okay? So my daughter, though, my 11-year-old, she just loves it. She loves cooking. And so she's like, oh, I'm going to fry an egg for breakfast. And as much as laissez-faire as I am, I'm not going to go let her fool with the stove and, burn herself or the whole house down. So I'm like, okay, I know that I would like you to do it by yourself, but I know that the only way that you would do this successfully and not kill yourself, burn the house down, or give yourself serious food poisoning from eating raw eggs or whatever, I'm gonna have to help you. So it was kind of like that. So FDR knew, he knew that despite the states, trying to do it themselves, they just needed assistance. It was just not going to be possible. So FDR, he ran on a campaign platform of dealing out a new set of cards to the American people. Like, when you are playing solitaire, I don't even think people play this anymore. This was a long time ago when the computer first came out, and they had a button that said games, and one of them was solitaire. There was only a couple on there. Solitaire, Spider, I think, and something else, or chess or something. Anyway, if you ever played solitaire and you click, okay, you don't have any more moves, you say, oh, I'm going to click for a new deal. It's like a whole new set of cards. So that was what his campaign was, saying that I'm going to deliver a new deal to the people of to America, a way to get us up off our feet. And that was what he was, saying as part of the campaign. And it really resonated with people of America, because they were like, it can't be any worse than it is now. And so FDR, he won the election and became the president. Now, FDR saw that what he had inherited in the American presidency was a lot of people that were crying out for help. So he needed to start programs to help people and to get the economy back and running, and he had to do that quickly. Now, what he decided to do is he put into place a bunch of programs that he called the New Deal programs. Now, these programs were created to encourage the economy to come back, to get money start flowing in the United States, to get people out there working and jobs and things like that. Well, there was an issue with that, but we'll talk about that in a second. So some of the big New Deal programs that he did, and I'm reading this right off of your book, was the Agricultural Adjustment Administration, the National Recovery Administration, the Tennessee River Valley Authority, the Civil Works Administration, the Civil Conservation Corps, the Works Progress Administration. I mean, there was just all these things. And they called them the alphabet agencies because they were known by their letters. So it wasn't the Works Progress Administration, it was the WPA. It wasn't the Civil Works Administration, it was the CWA. It was always known by those little letters. Well, there are a couple of these that really, really impacted the people of Louisiana much more than other ones did. Some of these programs, like the Tennessee River Valley, that was to, kind of help with the making dams or something. I can't remember the exact what it did, but there were some of them that were, trying to get roads or whatever and stuff in certain areas. But the ones that really affected Louisiana were the AAA, the Agricultural Adjustment Administration, because this was specifically put into place for farmers. Now, there's a lot of controversy with the AAA, okay, because what his idea, FDR's idea for raising price, we're getting more money and increasing the, I guess, the economy as far as agriculture would go, was having these farmers that were left with all this surplus after World War One, instead of, he wanted them to destroy it. He wanted them to completely burn it and get rid of it, because that way there would be scarcity. And we talked about scarcity before briefly, but meaning when there is a scarce amount of a product, people are willing to pay more for it. So like if there's not, that's the whole reason when Apple comes out with something new, there's not a lot of them, because there's less of them, and the people who really want them are willing to pay whatever's needed to get it. So FDR's AAA program paid these farmers to destroy surplus crops. Now, a lot of people were like, why would you do that when half of the American population are starving to death? Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just give it to people? If you don't want it, give it to people. But no, that would make people not want it. It wouldn't increase the need for it if they gave it away. So a lot of people really dislike the AAA program because there are people literally starving to death in the streets, and this program was paying farmers to set all this food up in flames instead of giving it to people who were desperately needing it. It was like, it was cruel. It was cruel. Because, you know, you think about it. You got little babies starving to death, and you've got all this wheat, or you've got corn, or you've got oranges, something, and you're just burning it. And they're literally starving 20, 30 miles away. You know, it was pretty sad. But that was the AAA. The next one was the Civil Works Administration, and this put people to work building roads and schools, you know, different work, you know, physical labor kind of type of work. The WPA, the Work Progress Administration, did the same thing. It put people to work building offices and buildings and post offices and airports, things like that. Now, yes, this put people to work. However, if the people are working, and these are all government jobs, how are we as Americans paying for this? Because we're broke as a joke right now. We are broke. We don't have any money, basically. How are we paying for the AAA, the TVA, the NRA, the CWA, the CCC, the WPA? How are we paying for this? Well, that's another issue. You see, the whole New Deal program is, you've got people that say, oh, it was a great idea. It was a great idea. It really was. I mean, his whole genuine idea of getting people out there really was good. And if it wasn't good economically, it was great for people's morale to kind of feel like, okay, I'm making a difference. I'm doing something. But in the end, I mean, it really put us in debt. We were trying, you know, his goal to pay for it, the FDR, the way that he had designed, you know, okay, we're going to pay for this, was by decreasing salaries for certain governmental employees, decreasing the budget, cutting programs, cutting military spend. He tried to find ways to fund this. And I'm not saying that he did not just go and do this and say, okay, well, you know, we're going to just whatever. He really did try. But the problem is that no one really had that huge surplus of money to, you know, really even pay a huge amount of taxes. It was just really difficult for us to get out of this. So even though we had all these New Deal programs under FDR, the New Deal did not get us out of the Great Depression. You've got people now, if you have 20 different historians sitting all in a room, and you asked each one of them what got us out of the Great Depression, you might have about 6 or 7 different answers. You truly will. Now, my answer as a novice historian, or a historian in my own mind, because, you know, that's me, but I am almost a doctor. But if you ask me, the one thing that really got us out of the Depression was not the New Deal, because that kind of dug us a little bit further in debt. It was World War II. When World War II came, And before we joined, because we didn't join right away, because the people in America were like, we don't want any of this. We just went through World War I. Now we're dealing with a depression. We are not getting involved in Europe's trouble, because first it was just in Europe. It was Hitler against Poland, and it was places, Serbia, Croatia, all these kind of places. It wasn't anywhere dealing with the United States. So the majority of people were saying, we don't want none of this. We don't want none of this. But England and some of our allies were coming over to us and saying, hey, we need your help. If you can't join us in the fight, can we buy things from you? Can we buy airplanes? Can we buy these things? Because we can't get them. And if we don't fight back Hitler, it's the end. So once World War II started, and before we became involved, and even after, definitely after we became involved, when the countries, our allied countries were coming to the United States and saying, hey, we need help, we need bombs, we need ammunition, we need submarines, we need airplanes, we need tanks, and we were starting to build those things. We need food for our soldiers. We need this. The farmers started producing more food to sell overseas. They were starting to make tanks, automotive vehicles, all kinds of different like technology, phones, things like that. We started churning those things out and selling them overseas and saying, hey, here, we'll sell it to you. We'll make it. Because they couldn't access it right there. That's when we came out of the Great Depression. But that is my interpretation, and that's the one that I think your textbook even says that too. True recovery from the Great Depression did not occur until the United States began spending even more money to acquire the supplies and support the troops for World War II, because that's when it really ended. The New Deal programs were honorable. I mean, they really were. They were really trying to get people out of debt. And this is, it was hard. How could we? I mean, I don't even want to know, like, if I were president, like, lots of people are like, well, I wouldn't do it. Well, you don't know what you would do. You don't have the forethought of saying what eventually would happen. You put yourself in that position and you say, I don't know, if I were running the country, how would I get it back on its feet? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I don't know how I would. I have no idea what I would do. I don't know, get everybody to live together and share resources and be like the big commune or something. I don't know. That's what, so I think FDR was very honorable in trying to really kind of get the whole country back to work and to get people, eating at least again, and basically not, because during the Depression too is when the Dust Bowl hit, and that's when all this dust started covering all these areas, in the Midwest, and it just, people didn't even, there was nothing, and they were living in dust-ridden places. It was insane. It was FDR and Herbert Hoover, I'm telling you, both of them, they were given an enormous task that I think I don't even want to even think about what I would have to do. The presidency is a very thankless job, in my opinion, where you're just so much riding on your shoulders. I would never, that was not anything I would ever want to do. Never, ever, ever. Okay? So, FDR's programs now, they're, once the war breaks out, they kind of fall to the wayside because America starts making money. But let's backtrack a little bit in Louisiana. So before World War II, when FDR was, before he was even president, down in Louisiana, we had our own pretty, very, I guess, influential politician here that was making waves. And his name was Huey Pierce Long. Now, Huey Long, and I've told you this before, maybe I haven't, I don't know. Gosh, I've been teaching so long, I don't even know who I tell what to. But anyway, so Huey Long is our statue in Statuary Hall in Washington, D.C., in the Capitol, Rotunda, I don't know if it is Rotunda, but in the Capitol, there is a room called Statuary Hall, and each state is able to submit a statue of someone who kind of represents the state. Now, there's Stephen F. Austin for Texas, father of Texas. There's all kind of different people. I think there's a Benjamin, and you can switch them out. You can change them. But ours in Louisiana is Huey Long. Now, I have long been on a futile quest saying, I think we should change the Huey Long statue and put Ruby Bridges or Homer Plesson. That's who I vote for. I truly do. I'm like, why do we have Huey Long? Because Huey Long was very, he was charismatic. He had a lot of people. He could make people like him very easily, but he was unbelievably corrupt, like really corrupt, like total dirty politician. It was just crazy. So Huey Long, though, he became really, really popular with the people when the Great Depression hit. So because Huey Long was, his whole platform, what he ran on, and he ran for governor of Louisiana, and he eventually did win, but he ran on the premise that it wasn't fair that only a few people were very wealthy and the majority of people were very poor. And since Louisiana was mostly very poor, his message really resonated with the people of Louisiana. His motto was, every man is a king. Every man's a king. Not one person should be having all of one thing and then all these other people be left with nothing, okay? He even did a speech on it, which I'm going to probably include in here. It's so difficult to understand what he's saying because he's got a really, really strong accent. So but you know, the way that he presented himself. But when you watch it, I'm going to put it in here. I want you to pay attention to his verbal language, his body language, what he's saying to the people, how he's saying it, because he's very, very charismatic. When someone is charismatic, you get these people kind of draw you in, like you're forced to listen, and you're like, oh, you just, okay, tell me more, that kind of stuff. He's that way, and that's what eventually, you know, he won the governorship of Louisiana, but he, you know, he was pretty shady. So when he was running, he had a whole platform. Now, if you guys, you know, the president this year in 2019, you're going to see a lot of campaign promises, especially in the presidential election. And what these are is the things that they say they'll do. If I'm president, I'll do X, Y, Z. If I'm governor, I'll do X, Y, Z. Well, yeah, if you're whatever, governor, whatever, but you can't make any of those decisions without the Congress approving it. Well, people, you know, whatever. That's how they just didn't even listen, because Huey Long was that charismatic that they didn't even really pay attention. He said he was going to be doing all these wonderful things, but if you knew anything about the government, you would know that he would need the full support of the Louisiana Congress before he would pass any of this into place. So he started going town to town, poor town to poor town. He did not campaign to the wealthy people of Louisiana. That was not he was like, look, I'm not going to campaign to you. I'm not, because he knew they weren't going to vote for him. So he went to all the poor parishes, and he was talking to them, and he would say, hey, if you vote for me, this is what's going to happen. And since, you know, you've got a majority of people that were poor in these poor parishes, they were like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's what I want. And they were voting for him because we have, as we've talked about before, a representative democracy. And in representative democracy, we elect someone to speak on our behalf. And Huey Long was who Louisiana represented. Now, Huey Long's promises, he said all kind of stuff. He said that he would expand public education. He would give free textbooks to everybody, because back then, you had to buy them or to provide them for your students, and nobody had any money for that. He said that he would expand highways, he would pave more roads, he would improve transportation, he would build a bridge over the Mississippi River, he would improve health care and mental health care, he would establish a school, he would do a big state university. He was saying he was going to do all of these things. And, you know, if you think about it, he can't really do any of them unless he's got congressional approval. But people weren't really hearing that. They were hearing, finally, somebody's going to do something for us. Because as you remember, we talked back last chapter, in chapter 8, we learned all about the Bourbon Democrats and the Redeemers, whose whole goal was to make Louisiana go back to the way it was before the Civil War. And that just didn't mean with slavery. That meant poor white people too. So when Huey Long comes around and he's promising, saying, I'm here to help you. I'm here for you. People were saying, yeah, this sounds like a pretty good God. This is somebody I want to vote for. So Huey Long won. Okay, he definitely won. However, he was completely corrupt. He was really, really, really shady in that he was putting into place, he made sure that every government agency in Louisiana reported directly to him. So through, outwardly, he was saying, oh, I'm here for the people of Louisiana. I'm here for you. I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to help you do this. Inwardly, it was kind of like this huge power trip, whereas he was the king, the top kingpin, and everybody else had to report to him. So even like he had everyone reporting to him. Even small parish governments would report to him. So everyone he had made it by filling these positions with friends of his, that everybody in every governmental position, in the parishes as well, in any type of government, were all people that supported him and would listen to him and let him be in control. They were all kind of like puppets, and Huey Long was the puppet master and told them what to do. Now, that's really very, very bad, obviously. I mean, that's serious corruption, because that gave Huey Long ultimate power over everyone and everything in Louisiana. He was holding the cards for everything political in Louisiana. Everything political. Well, Huey Long decided, instead of governor, he wanted to run for senator, because Huey Long's main goal was to become president. He wanted to be president, and honestly, he was well on his way before he was assassinated. But he decided he was going to run for the Louisiana Senate, and he won. Well, he was the senator now, so you would think that he would, vacate his the governorship, and give it to the lieutenant governor, the next guy in charge. Well, Huey didn't want to do that because he didn't like the lieutenant governor. So he was actually acting as state senator and governor at the same time. And he said he was going to do this until Paul Sear, who was the lieutenant governor, was no longer in office. And lo and behold, Sear resigns from office. I'm sure he was, pushed, but he decides, I'm resigning from office. Well, that's fabulous, because Huey Long puts in one of his good buddies, his Longites, named Oscar K. Allen, and he basically was just a figurehead. He was a mouthpiece for Huey Long. Anything Huey said to do, he did. Anything Huey said to support, he supported. Any vote that Huey said, hey, vote on this, he did that. So he was literally, truly only a mouthpiece for Huey Long. He never really made any decisions on his own. So they started giving him the nickname, calling him OK Allen, because it's Oscar K. Allen, because he just okayed everything that Huey said. Huey would say something, he'd say, okay. Huey would say, hey, do this, okay. You make sure that you get this done, okay. So they called him OK Allen. And Huey Long was basically governor, and he ruled Louisiana. He was the king of Louisiana. He was everything, okay? So the Great Depression rolls around, FDR is president. Well, Huey Long, at first, is a big supporter of FDR. He says, I like what you're doing here. I like your mind, I like your thought process. But he thought that it wasn't far enough, okay? So instead of the New Deal, Huey submitted his own goal for getting America out of the Great Depression. And he called this the Share the Wealth. And what Share the Wealth meant that you would put a cap on how much people could earn and earn to take home. And any money that was extra would be distributed amongst all the people. Now, a lot of people say that is not fair. Now looking at it, we're like, that's not fair. You really don't want to look at it that way. But back then, you had so many people who were not just poor, but were starving and homeless. They didn't have anything, that a lot of people thought it was a great idea. They're like, it's not fair. He would say, and it's not fair for Rockefeller and Vanderbilt and Carnegie to have all these millions and billions of dollars where you stand watching your baby starve to death. And people were all like, yeah, they were all about it. He wanted to say that it's not fair. We're going to do this. We're going to spread it out equally. Everyone's going to have a little bit. There's going to be a chicken in every pot. Every man a king. We're going to share the wealth. We're going to spread it around. Well, it was a lot of people thought it was a great idea. Now, you look at it in 2019, you're like, okay, no, that's, the socialism, really you can't, you can't do that. That's not fair. But back then, when there weren't these, it was thought of as, it sounds like a good idea. It sounds like something that might work. It might work until you are in a position of making really good money, and when you have to give all like a good portion of it over to the government to disperse amongst others. This is still a hot debate ticket item as something like share the wealth. We do have politicians in office today who think that something like this would be beneficial for America today. Watch some of the stuff that's going to be coming around. I guarantee you're going to have people coming out of the woodwork for the presidential debates and who's running for president or whatever. And some people believe still that Huey Long was right and that his programs would actually work. Personally, as a historian or novice historian, history teacher, I don't think they would, in my opinion. I don't think Huey Long's things would have worked. I just don't think that there would have been enough people to provide everything that he wanted. Like the majority, if there wasn't enough rich people to supply all the poor people, it just wasn't enough. Okay? But, some people think it might have worked. Personally, I don't. I'd like to know your opinion, and it will be, I'll ask from you in class. We're going to talk about it. So Huey Long was well on his way to become president. Once his Share the Wealth plan got out, and people were finding out about it, they're like, this man is smart. This guy right here, Huey Long, he's the guy to follow. And FDR was getting a little concerned. He was like, is this guy coming after my job? And he never did. Huey Long never was able to come after FDR's job, and that was because he was assassinated. So remember how I said that Huey Long was kind of the king of Louisiana, right? He was the one in charge. He was the one that had his foot in every single political door in our state. So even though he was a senator up in Washington, he would still come back down to Baton Rouge and kind of play governor every now and then and just come down here and do stuff. So he came back down here in September 8th, 1935. And when he was in the state capitol, he was kind of overseeing some stuff. Dr. Carl Weiss went up to him and shot him, and didn't kill him, but he shot him like a bunch of times. Well, Huey Long's bodyguards shot Carl Weiss immediately and shot him back, so he died, the assassinator. They rushed Huey over to a hospital where they tried to perform surgery on him, and they did, but his surgery was unsuccessful, and he died 2 days later after his surgery. So Huey Long, who may have become president, I think it was a really good shot. He was going to give FDR a big run for his money, that was for sure. He never did. He was assassinated. And so you would think, that's the end of Huey Long, but no. Huey Long's legacy is still around some places today. Huey Long, he's in Statuary Hall, but Huey Long's friends, remember how he put friends and people in all these places of government? He did that so that he would be able to control them, really. They were still in control. And so now they started still applying the tactics that Huey Long had done, but without having the care for the majority of people. So they were still extraordinarily corrupt, but they weren't so, as far as like Huey was trying to help the people of Louisiana. A lot of these people, the Longites that were left in control after Huey died, did not have that, I guess, compassion for the poor guy of Louisiana. We start seeing a lot of them coming around. One of them, and then eventually they start getting arrested because they get caught, they get found out. See, Huey Long was protected because he was helping the people. The people loved him. And they were like, oh, whatever, that's just Huey. Huey's being Huey, But when he died and these other people, his friends, were in control, they weren't helping them out that much anymore. So when they started acting up, they were like, yeah, you think so? So they started getting in trouble. They started getting convicted and thrown into jail. One of them was the governor, Governor Lecce. Oh, I always call him Lecce. It might be Leech, but I don't know. I don't know. No comprendo. Whatever. So anyway, Governor Lecce, the governor of Louisiana, gets thrown into jail because he's using state taxpayer dollars, which Huey was using to kind of fund the programs. He put a lot in his pocket, but he did help the people of Louisiana. Lecce did not. He built himself a mansion and bought himself a yacht. Okay? And the people of Louisiana were no longer sympathetic. They weren't like, oh, Huey, you little rascal, you. Not like this. They're like, watch us, Lecce. Put him in Angola. Okay? So, and that wasn't it. I mean, it was things happening, one or the other. All these people that were, under Huey, they were eventually just dropping because they were not like him, I guess, in a way that the people loved them. Earl Long, who is probably the most colorful governor we've ever had in Louisiana. We're going to talk about him later on, but I mean, he was just, oh my goodness. He was the one that came along. He's Huey's brother. But I mean, it was just one thing after another with this whole long legacy. And what Huey did, he became the first huge modern mass political leader, bringing the attention to the whole country. Like the whole country knew about Huey Long. Everybody was talking about it. Okay, so he was like the first one to really, like in Louisiana, to do that. But what he also really did was that he made Louisiana synonymous with governmental corruption and bribery and all these other kind of things, because that's kind of how he ruled Louisiana. He was the king of Louisiana. So when World War II came, Louisiana and the United States, we came out of our depression and we went to fight for democracy, just to not fall into the hands of a crazy person, which was Adolf Hitler, which is where we will kind of segue into for next week. So without further ado, that's all that I've got for you today. Make sure that you put in your code word. It's right here, your Miss Myers Show code word. Attend your Class Connect sessions. Make sure that when you're filling out your guided notes, I'm still going to keep pointing, that you do so correctly, because I will send them back to you. And I will see you in class. Bye.
According to the tables which we have assembled, it is our estimate that 4% of the American people own 85% of the wealth of America, and that over 70% of the people of America don't own enough to pay the debts that they owe. How many men ever went to a barbecue and would let one man take off the table what's intended for 9/10 of the people to eat? The only way you'll ever be able to feed the balance of the people is to make that man come back and bring back some of that grub he ain't got no business with. Now, how are you going to feed the balance of the people? What's Morgan and Baruch and Rockefeller and Mellon going to do with all that grub? They can't eat it. They can't wear the clothes. They can't live in the house. Give them a yacht. Give them a palace. Send them to Reno and give them a new wife when they want it. If that's what they want. But when they've got everything on the God's living earth that they can eat and they can wear and they can live in, and all that their children can live in and wear and eat, and all their children's children can use, then we got to call Mr. Morgan and Mr. Mellon and Mr. Rockefeller back and say, come back here. Put that stuff back on this table here that you took away from here, that you don't need. Leave something else for the American people to consume. And that's the program. We're not going to destroy the Gulf Refining Company. We're not going to destroy the Standard Oil Company. But we're going to say that the limit of any one man stock ownership in the Standard Oil Company is from $3 to $5 million to that individual, and that the balance of the people of America own the balance of what the Standard Oil Company is worth. All right. Then we start from the bottom, that the 25 or more million American families shall have a homestead, a home, and the comforts of a home, including an automobile and a radio, the things it takes in that house to live on. We say to America, 125 million, none shall be too big, none shall be too poor, none shall work too much, none shall be idle. No luxurious mansions empty, none walking the streets, none impoverished, none in pestilence, none in want, but in the land blessed by the smile of the Creator, with everything to be consumed, to be eaten, to be worn, that America will become a land sharing the fruits of the land, not for the favored few, not to satisfy greed, but that all may live in a land in which the Lord has provided an abundance sufficient for the luxury and convenience of the people in general, I think.
Okay, so this is how Tigger eats now. So this is, ow! Because it's like I said, I need input, please. So he gets wrapped up in a towel because he gets really angry if you're not fast enough. And so, in order for him to not scratch me, because he really hurts me, I have to wrap him up in this towel. So I've got to he only eats turkey, and I have to cut it up in little bitty pieces like this because he only has 4 teeth. So for real, this is every day. So please send me in any kind of, any advice that you've got, because I've tried everything. I've tried wet food. I've tried like anything. He won't eat any. This is all he eats. You hear him? And he makes these growling noises while he eats. I'm gonna try and bring it a little closer. And that lets me know that, he's getting angry. Let's see, hold on, I'm gonna move my phone. It's very early Saturday morning in my house, so let's see if we can eat this. Ready? See if we can hear him. Oh, sorry. And look at poor Blue. He's like over here on the side, like, what about me? That's Blue. It's our other cat. Blue. We don't give him turkey. He just doesn't, he has to eat regular food. So here we go. No, look at him. You see? He's trying to get his paw out because he was. Hear him? Look, he did it again. Vivian, hush! Out! Do you hear him? He's like crazy. Ow! The 4 teeth he does have are these right here, and so they hurt. Easy. Let's see if he'll do it and he can hear it again. So any animal. I'm like taking my life in my hands every time I feed him. And then there's poor Blue. Blue, do you want some turkey? Blue, do you want turkey too? Nope, no turkey for you. What's wrong? You're stuck. How do I open this? Okay, so what do I do? Call 911. Hold on. I don't know what to do. You really want me to call 911? What? Are you coming? Do you want me to hit the button that says door open?